Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this CDW and Splunk presentation regarding securing cloud environments. My name is Mickey Fukushima, and today we're fortunate enough to be joined by Tom Stoner, Senior Director of Cloud Specialist at Splunk, Cal Kerm, Cybersecurity Specialist at Splunk, Theo Van Wyck, Head of Cybersecurity and Solutions Development at CDW, as well as KJ Burke, Principal Technology Strategist, Hybrid Cloud at CDW Canada. So without further ado, we'll kick things off today. I'd like to thank you for joining. Move on to the next slide, please. We'd like to start off by giving a brief introduction to CDW for those who are unaware. So CDW is an international organization, though it has a very large presence within Canada. There are 9 locations across the country, and we've been serving the Canadian market for nearly 20 years. Recently, we were just assigned 161 Fortune 500 list, and we're very proud and fortunate to have clients that have helped us to achieve that point. Next slide, please. So we've been able to achieve, previous slide. We've been able to achieve our place in the Fortune 500 due to the partners, including Splunk within the cybersecurity space. Today, we're looking forward to speaking with you all a little bit about how Splunk and CDW can really help augment and strengthen your security posture overall, as you're beginning to move into some of those cloud-first strategies and really building upon your existing infrastructure as such. Next slide, please. So over the past 20 or so years, CDW has become a leader within the Canadian market, and really that's due to a strong track record of helping our clients solve complex problems, and in addition to that, acquiring organizations strategically to help really build a strong practice area for both cloud and security. Today, we're going to discuss that a little bit further as we dive deeper into the security analytics realm to really strengthen some of those facets. Slide. Briefly, we'll touch on the partnership, CDW and Splunk. So we really want to emphasize the strength of this particular partnership. We strongly believe in Splunk's technologies and their capabilities. They're consistently a leader within all of the third-party auditors and organizations that consult within this space. And with that, we have the utmost confidence in the technology moving forward and have built our team accordingly so that we're able to best serve our customers to drive some of those business outcomes. CDW currently has over 100 staff that are focused on security, and within that, we have over 50 Splunk certifications. This is across all of our pre-sales staff, as well as our analysts within our security and networking practices. We've really begun to focus more on cloud technologies as our clients have begun to demand that more and more as a strategic decision as well. And we augment that with a strong security practice backed by some of the industry-leading certifications within the space. It's not often that we're able to say that we hold coveted certifications across vendor technologies as well as industry certifications, but we're very proud to hold many of the most sought-after certifications within the Splunk realm, including the Splunk Core Consultant, Architect, Admin, and Power User, building upon an already powerful security practice that has been able to help several clients achieve their outcomes Canada-wide. Now, this wouldn't be possible without the help of the solution architecture team, as well as the consulting and managed services team. Really, these are the drivers behind the security practice at CDW. And of course, we're leaning on our partners like Splunk to help us drive some of these goals that our client organizations are having, whether it's from the security perspective or migrating some existing workloads into cloud environments. It's important to have a strong security practice that's able to cover all different facets of the technology realm. And we do this through end-to-end solutions that are not focused on technology, but focused on strategy that our clients have, right? So these can be, anything from on-premise applications to those organizations that are looking to migrate additional workloads to the cloud environment while maintaining their security posture across their organization. This has been accelerated over the events over the past year, and we've seen increased drive from the global events over the past year or so to drive some of these services that we've been able to deliver upon. Now, without further ado, I'd like to pass the microphone off to Tom Stoner, Senior Director of Cloud Specialist at Splunk.
Thanks. My name is Tom Stoner. I'm the Senior Director of Cloud Specialist at Splunk. So I cover our Americas and public sector business. I've been with Splunk for about 6 years now. The last 3 years in the cloud, on the cloud team as part of the management team for cloud. At Splunk, we have a thing we call our million data points. I'd like to share a little something about each one of us before we present. So I figured I'd throw that in here. And my million data point that I typically like to share is I have a 19-year-old daughter and I have a 6-year-old son. And so 4 years ago, when my daughter was 15 and my son was 2, on the same day, I was teaching her to drive and potty training him. And I like to say I did a much better job with him because he never misses the bowl and she wrecked my car. So anyway, just a little story about my life. I'm going to talk very, very briefly on Splunk Cloud and really the journey that our customers are on their digital journeys and what it looks like to do a migration from an on-prem into the cloud. And we'll talk some about that. Obviously, if there's anything related to forward-looking statements, I'll let you know. I don't know that I have much, but we have to throw this in, make the attorneys happy. So next slide, please. So right now, like rapidly moving to the cloud it's an imperative. And COVID just accelerated digital transformations. But the resulting multi-cloud and hybrid landscape really leads to immense operational complexity and really an expanded attack surface. And if organizations do not find a way to manage this complexity and secure their world, their digital transformation projects will ultimately fail or be compromised. So leaders must take a new approach to harness all their data to fully realize the promise of the cloud. And Splunk accelerates that cloud-driven transformation by powering a comprehensive data strategy for security, IT, and DevOps. And so you can secure, operate, and innovate faster in a multi-cloud and hybrid environment. And so we're going to talk today, about focus on security, but just know that, from across the landscape, we're there to help manage that multi-cloud environment and really be your data to everything platform. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on when I talk about some of our new pricing models. Next slide, please. So when we talk about getting value out of Splunk, really the cloud is the only way to do it. And this slide, I think, sums it up tremendously when we talk about how quickly you can get value with Splunk Cloud versus managing Splunk yourself, and whether that's managing in an on-prem environment, maybe in your own data centers, or even managing it in a BYOL, bring your own license and managing it in some public cloud, as well. So I have a great story. There was, when I was in sales as a rep here in Dallas, I had an account, a retail account that their manager, their SOC, talked at an event that we had. We had about 500 customers and prospective customers at an event up in Frisco, Texas. And he got up and he talked about the cloud. And what he said, you know, when I sent my PO in for Splunk Cloud, within 24 hours, I had my login. Within the first hour, I had data coming in and I was seeing something, you know, that I had to have an investigation on that I had no visibility to before. And so you could see, you get the login, right? And this customer within 1 hour was in a discovery and you know, executing use cases and implementing use cases. When you're managing Splunk yourself, right? There's typically, we've looked at customers sometimes take 3 to 6, even 9 months by the time they get their admin resources, architect their platform, you know, bring that platform up to speed. And so this is a tremendous, you know, a picture of what that looks like. And within the cloud, you're getting new features every 4 to 5 weeks. We've really moved to a cloud first company, and most of our customers are moving to be in the cloud. And so our focus is supporting them. And so within the cloud, you're getting new features every 4 to 5 weeks. We're on-prem, you're maybe once to twice a year, we're coming out with new releases. And then there's numerous features that are Splunk Cloud only that you won't get on-prem. Another example, a Canadian company that I had, a customer of ours, they ran Splunk themselves for 4 years. And it was a insurance company. And they came to us and they said, hey, we want to move to Splunk Cloud. And they had 150 gig, you know, we used to price solely on ingest, and they had 150 gig license. And for 4 years they were running, and they never expanded their use cases, 150 gig. Well, they came to Splunk Cloud, and within 3 months, they went to 1 terabyte of ingest. And within that same year, they went to 1.5 terabytes, so 10x what they were doing when they were on-prem. And I asked the CISO of the company, I said, you know, why were you expanding so fast, right? You, for 4 years, you were running pretty flat. And she said to me, she said, look, Tom, when we started to be able to focus on getting the value out of Splunk versus maintaining it, it really helped drive our value and drive the use cases that we could deliver within Splunk. So I think a great example of how Splunk Cloud helps deliver value much faster. Next slide, please. When we talk about security, right, the number one concern on anyone's mind today is about privacy and security. You hear it in the news all the time. I know that your data is safe with Splunk Cloud, and we take care of your privacy, your data governance, and your compliance requirements. Splunk Cloud is a segmented environment from your corporate infrastructure, which means that if you face a network or security incident, your data platform is immune and available for you to resolve that incident on time. Splunk Cloud is also available globally and has multi-site disaster recovery features. We deliver this by having 3 copies of your data and searches, as well as through self-healing in that cloud architecture. And so this ensures your business continuity and reduces your risk and exposure, and ultimately ensures data resiliency and quick resolution should something go down. And the other thing I just point out, right? We had a large, one of the 5 largest banks in all of Canada, and last year, when they were an on-prem customer, and they knew they were outgrowing and closing data centers, and they needed to move into the cloud. And originally, the SOC manager was like, "Hey, we can't have our data in Splunk Cloud. We need to manage it, even though they're going to move it up into AWS in a BYOL scenario." They said they couldn't, they wouldn't be able to, you know, get through all the security hurdles to get it into Splunk Cloud. Well, they went to their cloud team, who was moving all of these workloads into the cloud and other apps into the cloud, and they were kind of in line with the rest of the company to get their stuff moved to the cloud. And the AWS team over there said, "Why aren't you running this in Splunk Cloud? Don't they have a cloud offering, right? Why should we be trying to manage this and run this?" And with that, they said, "Okay, let's look at this." And they took us through a vetting process. And obviously, with our SOC 2, PCI, HIPAA, FedRAMP, obviously we've been vetted very well, and we've been able to manage that. And so they ended up moving their very large environment into Splunk Cloud. We've been vetted by over 250 financial services organizations, by hundreds of healthcare organizations, government organizations. And you know, I hear that often. Oh, we won't be able to move our data into your cloud. And when we really look at it and look under the covers, right, oftentimes we're going to be more secure than if they're doing it themselves. Next slide. And then the last, you know, I think this is my last slide, but just talking about achieving that highest platform efficiency. Again, we're going to release, deploy the releases for you. We're going to optimize your data platform. We have search and ingest elasticity, so you have seasonality requirements, being able to scale up and down. Obviously, we're the trusted experts, and we have adoption services as well that we bring with Splunk Cloud. And I like to say, you know, our admins, they never get sick, they never take vacation, they never quit on you, right? We're always there 24/7, and it really helps, you know, from you having to manage it yourself, you being that knock and the sock for Splunk, right? We're going to be that 24/7 for you. And just the amount of service and benefits that we provide, you know, our customers are quickly moving their cloud work or their Splunk workloads into the cloud. Next slide. I think that might be it, but let's check. Yeah, so I'm going to turn it over to Cal. He's going to talk about Splunk for the SOC and our security platform.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate that. And by no means is my million data points going to come close to yours, but I've got a 16 and 14-year-old here as well, both in competitive sports. My million data point here for today that I'll share is I'm an accredited fast pitch softball coach, as well as basketball and soccer. I've got accreditations for across those three sports. So I'm very much looking forward to reopening plans for this summer, because there's a lot of us going stir crazy over here. So I am going to take the next 10 minutes, and if we want to just move to the next slide. I really love what Tom talked about as far as efficiency. Efficiency is one of those keywords we use across all of our suites, all of our security, products, including security. And we really look at security as a data problem. So if we really think about problems that security teams face today, there's a few that really kind of bubble up to the top, and we've just kind of outlined these as well. So obviously, it's all about alerts, and there are far too many alerts. Threat actors are constantly leveraging, vast amounts of compute power. There's no possible way for humans to keep up with that. So we really need to, what I say is fight machines with machines and leverage the power of technology. When you get to limited resources and available talent, we all know, and you've seen all those slides where they talk about shortages. SOAR really plays a key role here in automating majority of those security workloads, automating playbooks. It means that your current teams don't have to do a lot of those tasks manually anymore. It frees up a bunch of time and allows you to kind of focus on those other mission critical tasks as well. So, too many security tools. There's, lots is talked about platform, and platform is one of the most overused terms in the industry that I'm finding here as well. But truly, when we're talking about SOAR, we are talking about platform. We are talking about bringing those integrations together, those disparate technologies that we need to do specific jobs within a security ecosystem. And that's really what SOAR brings to the table. It also, forces organizations to get into a process, whether it's a process that they already have or that they want to get to. We put some rigor around that. We kind of document that, and we put those processes in place as well. It's a platform that allows for that as well. MTTR, MTTD, so mean time to respond, mean time to detect, all that stuff becomes measurable, and we do a great job of actually increasing that speed. So tasks that usually would take, say, 30 plus minutes to do manually, we can do them in 30 seconds with a platform like SOAR. And then finally, those repetitive tasks, if there's something that we can identify that we're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, those are wasted. That's wasted energy. That's wasted efficiencies, and we can take those monotonous and routine tasks and build those playbooks and automate a lot of those processes, freeing up a bunch of time. So the biggest thing I get across here is the most valuable commodity that we can kind of give to our customers is time back. Next slide, please. So I want to briefly show the value of SOAR, what SOAR brings to the table. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to kind of walk you through how Splunk is doing it with our SOAR platform and our view of cybersecurity operations through something that we call OODA Loop. Now, OODA stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. By no means are we the creators of this. It was actually first created by the U.S. military, by Colonel John Boyd, the U.S. Air Force, and he created this framework with the idea of whoever is able to execute through this loop the fastest would win a battle. The same really applies to the cybersecurity. So if we work kind of from left to right, security products that kind of help you do a lot of the observation are things like firewalls, IPS, endpoints, and so forth. They collect a bunch of information, present that information through to you in order to help you kind of understand what's happening in those environments. So then you need to take those observations and kind of make sense of them. You need to apply some level of analytics, make some observables in order to kind of draw some conclusions, maybe see some trends. And a tool like a SIM can really help here as well in that stage. From that point on, in that observe stage and that analytical tools and the orientation stage, that's where the alerts are really generated. So we're creating those alerts in those first two steps. And then for the most part, those security teams then decide to act on something. And that's still a manual process without something like a SOAR. So analysts needs to make those decisions based on what they've received, what they've identified, and they need to take some kind of an action. So if we go to the next slide. When we start looking at an ecosystem, and I'm going to use, let's go back, please. Perfect. And we start looking at, again, the term platform. This is really kind of where we as Splunk are building that platform. So if you're familiar with our SIM technology, enterprise security is that tool that'll help you to observe and orient. So we're ingesting those alerts, we're bringing those into our enterprise security platform, which is our SIM, and we're able to take those tasks that used to be processed at human speed, and now we're executing those at machine speed. So, and then at that point, once we have those alerts in-house, the decision that we can kind of make, we can make decisions. If we see certain aspects, certain trends, we can kind of build those into our SOAR platform and act accordingly and build those automations, those playbooks. So if it's working through a particular flow of a playbook, we can tie that together with whatever technology is in that environment. And that's really kind of the basis of working its way quickly through this OODA loop. Some of the time it can be fully automated through this whole loop. Other times we have what we call kind of semi-automation, where we actually go out to an analyst, and an analyst makes a decision before it kind of progresses through that workflow. But for the most part, what we are is we're just giving you back time. Next slide, please. So as a whole, the objective that we have of really any SOAR, not just kind of our SOAR, but I'm just using ours as the best example here, is to help organizations work smarter, respond faster, and really strengthen that overall security posture, right? So by automating these security tasks, alert triage, and so forth, we can help organizations work on, and get time back in order to focus on those mission critical tasks. So just going around the loop here, at minimum, we kind of look at these elements of any SOAR platform. Need to have that orchestration aspect and be able to build that automation, build those workflows, build that process. The automation piece, obviously tying it together with anything that really comes, we can tie together with an API. Our SOAR in particular is one of the only products we have in our security portfolio that really can stand on its own without Splunk Enterprise or anything like that. So we would have some aspect of vendor agnostic capabilities within Splunk SOAR itself. Collaboration, allowing organizations to communicate amongst analysts to make them more efficient as well. Concept of having a war room type atmosphere, or kind of a Slack channels and so forth, and being able to communicate, add artifacts, share information, bring other analysts into incidents in order to kind of help remediate those. We also have, as part of our platform and part of what we consider kind of at minimum for a SOAR platform is event management, and as well as case management. So being able to take those incidents and be able to manage that and push it through a process within the organization. And then of course, what good is that process if you can't kind of measure against it? And that's where our reporting and metrics really kind of come into play. And then so the last slide here, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about specific use cases. And I know we're focusing very heavily on the security side here. Obviously, it's near and dear to my heart. And these are some of the most common use cases that you would see in a SOAR environment. But even if you drop the S off of SOAR, there are things that we can orchestrate and automate within an IT ops environment, within non-security use cases. So whether that be HR type stuff, or whether it be IT infrastructure, there's a lot of things that we can do within the orchestration and automation side here. So that's kind of my time. I'm open to kind of sticking around for questions as well, but I'll hand it over to this folks at CDW.
Perfect. Thank you, Cal. Thank you, Tom. So now we get to the interesting part. We're going to dive into a little bit of a fireside chat here. Now, to the audience out there, feel free to drop any questions you have into the question box there. We have some questions prepared for you that I figured that we'll test KJ, Tom, and Cal's knowledge. And then, but definitely, obviously, this session is all about you. So please make sure you get any questions, or if there's topics that's of interest or leans in a certain way, please make sure you pop those in the channel for us, and we can get these gentlemen to address that as well. So first off, thank you, Cal and Tom, for the presentation. Really, really interesting. Like, when we look at what we do at CDW here, Splunk has been a long-time partner. Mickey highlighted that in the beginning as well. It's been a very, very interesting evolutionary path. And originally, like you said, Cal, it's a little bit it's more security heavy today on the Splunk side for sure. Splunk has such a wide bench of options and variety, but that's really where we started our journey with Splunk as well, and it has evolved ever since. But turning it back on the concept of hybrid cloud a little bit, when we look at hybrid cloud and we think of hybrid cloud in terms of both on-prem and mixed cloud environments, and then for the sake of the discussion, I'll open this up and say for hybrid cloud, even a multi-cloud environment where you're dealing with different vendors potentially. KJ, maybe if I can get you to lay the groundwork for us on this one. What are some of the most important boxes to check when you're looking at a hybrid cloud approach?
Yeah, thanks, Theo. So, really when we start approaching the hybrid cloud, there's a couple of properties that we like to be able to speak to, and that's going to be, portability, observability, and manageability. So with that, you really want to create a way to move workloads around, to be able to migrate applications to where the business can get the most value out of them at any given time. And part of what you need to do that is really monitoring and observability into what the current state of that application is, what is the experience your users are having, and then being able to take action on that. And so so that's kind of when we think about the hybrid cloud and we think about, well, what's different? Well, the difference is your applications could be operating out of the public cloud, they could be operating out of the private cloud, and it's really that portability and maximizing business value that you want to focus on. And so I think that's where maybe the Splunk guys can comment in. There's some unique value proposition in both the the SaaS version of Splunk Cloud and SOAR that I think really kind of speak to portability, manageability, and observability.
Perfect. Thank you, Cal. Tom, anything you'd like to add on to that?
Yeah, I'll just add in that with Splunk and Splunk Cloud, right? It's interesting now as we get more and more customers that are going in with multi-cloud environments. I start to see now, hey, is it better to have a Splunk in GCP and AWS and we keep our data separate, or is it better to have it together? And and it's kind of, you know, that cop-out answer, it depends, but most of the time we say together, because then you're going to have the data, you know, a larger data correlation and being able to look across the entire footprint. You know, one thing I will say to our customers, I think data egress costs, and you say, oh, now I got to take data out of, say, let's say it's out of GCP and AWS or vice versa. Oh, there's some egress costs. I think that's mostly fear versus reality. Unless you're approaching like Netflix type of scale, you know, those costs typically are you know, much less than kind of even some of the monitoring costs that you would have, and it makes it more beneficial to have things centrally from a data correlation standpoint. That's the way that our customers typically go.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tom. Kyle, anything for your side on that, or?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, and spot on, is from a security perspective, it's all about visibility, right? So bringing that data into a point where it's able to kind of we're able to run those analytics on it is key. So again, we support, you know, hybrid environments for sure, but obviously we want to be able to see as much as possible.
Perfect. And you know, from a CDW side, sort of rounding some of this out a little bit too, I think when you step back for a moment and you look at the policy, process, and procedures that wraps these, obviously one of the big things that we've noticed too is that trying to have that ability to keep a unified policy and approach. So have a unified security posture, right? And that's where when you get into multi-cloud and on-prem and hybrid style environments, we found like using a tool like Splunk that gives me that unified dashboarding reporting where I can apply my security policy in a uniform manner is really, really important for us. It does not work with a fractured security program once you start specializing. Now, we have our first question from Mike Haney here. Mike, I hope I got your last name okay there. So the question says, just curious if you can speak to the in-house resource load required to onboard Splunk Cloud. If there is any way to ballpark what would be needed, we're in a significant resource bind and getting new technologies are quite limited, unfortunately. Splunk team, I'll open this one up to you.
Sure. So we can definitely help you kind of understand what those resource requirements are. Typically, we're taking about 75% of the requirements, you know, that we typically saw when our customers were trying to run Splunk themselves. So in onboarding Splunk Cloud, you're still responsible for things like, you know, onboarding the data, and you know, managing your users and things like that. But you know, we have programs that can help, our partners like CDW that can help you with that data onboarding. But once you get past that, most of the rest, like I gave that example of my customer here in Dallas, where it's logging in, and that onboarding is about 25% of what you used to do when you were managing Splunk yourself. So it's much less of a burden than trying to run Splunk completely on your own.
Perfect. Cal, anything from your side?
I couldn't have said it better myself. At the end of the day, I mean, there's resources available too. Obviously, training is one of the things that Splunk does really well, is documentation too, and obviously the partnership with CDW and the capabilities there too. So yeah, I'll just repeat what Tom said.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a program that we can run with CDW as well. We call it Audubon. It's a proof of value, right? Where we'll say, okay, what's your use cases, right? Let's pick 3 from a list that we have, and so we'll help you onboard, and you know, our resources will do that with CDW to onboard the data and prove it out in your environment. And then after that, it's okay, now we flip the switch, and now that Splunk Cloud instance goes from being a proof of value environment to a production environment. But now you've had, you know, practice in being able to understand what best way to onboard some data and get that into Splunk Cloud.
Right.
That's
Mike,
really
I think from, oh, sorry. So go ahead, KJ.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's a really interesting point too, because I think when we look at some of these, you know, potentially larger investments of time, not only are you reducing the amount of time to do that, but you can also approach it in a very pragmatic way. And you can say, you know, to Tom, to your point, I want to solve this one problem. I want to prove value in this one space. And because you're minimizing the amount of effort to do that, you can really do that. Whereas if you were trying to build up that entire environment on premises using your own resources, you may stumble just because doesn't make sense to go through that amount of effort to prove one single use case. And so in this case, it's really the value of the cloud, where we can leverage this as a SaaS service. We can do that. I like that proof of value. I may steal that one. And but it's really let's solve for this one business need, and then grow from there. But you've already achieved one of your goals by the time you've done that proof of value.
Right. Absolutely. And then Mike, from a CDW perspective, I think if I had you live on the line, one of the questions I would have asked is this migrating from an existing platform, or is this onboarding a brand new onboard, right? Either way, to Tom's point, Tom and Giles' point, and KJ's, let's set some targets. Like, this is something where we can help through a POV originally, but ultimately too, in terms of building out use cases and making sure that you're getting the value out of that, in addition to configuring log sources and just getting your information there. That is definitely something that CDW can help with as well, through looking at, even if it's looking at your security posture, your requirements, what are you truly trying to achieve from a business functionality, and then making sure that we have the KRIs and the KPIs driven out of the solution and dashboards, and building that for you so you see that value as the logs come in. So, gentlemen, let's tackle the next question here. Next question here that I want to dig into a little bit is, what should the minimum consideration be for encrypting data at rest? And Splunk, I'll let you, the Splunk gentleman, go first. When you look at your environments, when you recommend SaaS, your SaaS solutions, how do you handle that? What are some of the feature sets, and what's your recommendations?
Yeah, so our most of our customers will, they'll have a encryption at rest from a licensing standpoint. Of course, data in transit is always encrypted. We do have a BYOK, now where you can bring your own key. I'll still say, 99% of our customers still allow us to manage those keys. Very, very few are doing the bring your own key. And obviously we have all the processes behind. Our SOC 2 stands behind our cloud. And so for most of the time, right, we just came out with the BYOK last year. So, we just have a handful of customers. So for the last 5 years, right, we've been managing keys for our customers, and have been doing it very successfully and very, very carefully and very securely.
Yeah, and I don't know what to tell you, Theo. Like, you're talking to a security guy. Our recommendation is always going to be to encrypt the data wherever possible. But obviously, right, there's different classes of data. Our recommendation is always to be safer than sorry. But yeah, it's it's different for all customers. And I hate to answer questions with it depends, but our recommendation is always to kind of safeguard it.
Right. And definitely during the ability. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, the only other thing I would say is, obviously, encryption, yes, but we also have, just so everybody's aware, we do have the a PCI and a HIPAA attestation as well. So if you have those requirements, we can provide cloud with that. We also have FedRAMP, which is a level 2 moderate right now. Our IL5 is coming out very soon for customers in the DoD and the like. So from a security standpoint, a lot of different options depending on what your requirements are.
Absolutely, thanks. That's fantastic. That the bring your own key, very important. That even in our experience, that's really important when it's needed. To your point, the majority of customers are good with you handling keys. Just knowing that the data is encrypted at rest and actually protected, but knowing that you have that capability when required is really important. The other thing that I'm really excited to hear, and I know from working with you, is some of the certifications that you do have on those environments. The one thing that we always like to caution and just give people a heads up to is keep in mind that how you use the actual environment can still impact that certification, that attestation. So at the very least, you've provided the framework and the pieces there so that customers can meet that requirement. But when in doubt, just be cautious when you're consuming these SaaS services. that you are actually configuring and consuming it correctly from that perspective. KJ, any other thoughts? Maybe a little bit more if we open it up a little bit for you for consideration around encryption and data in the cloud that you want to add to?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think you all touched on sort of the shared responsibility model and how it's critical that as a consumer of a SaaS service, as a consumer of a cloud service, that you really understand what you are responsible for. And I think it's really important that SaaS service providers like Splunk are offering you the ability to bring your own keys to do that encryption. So I think that encryption is one of those things that once you set it, you don't really have to revisit it. Obviously, there is you need to protect those keys. You need to make sure that those aren't being compromised. But it's not like the encryption itself makes it more difficult to leverage the SaaS service. And so I think it's one of those things where I would have to have a pretty good reason why not to encrypt the data. And I think that's more and more, I think the way we need to approach some of these security features is there really a reason not to? And there's probably valid reasons occasionally for for not wanting to do that. But I would look very, very hard at that reason and make sure it's a valid business reason.
Perfect. Thanks. Yeah, they're all very good points. Maybe pivoting off of this, if we look at, we're talking about security and encryption and data in the cloud. Maybe to the, I'll fire this up maybe to the Splunk team first. In terms of Canadian services and data residency, what has your experience been with the Canadian market space and industry in terms of residency for both the data and the service?
Yeah, so we definitely get that requirement. We do have a, today our AWS offering out of Canada, so we're able to support that. And it often depends, right, on the customer and what their business is, but just know that we are able to support it with the Montreal or AWS Central that we have for Canada.
Yeah, we have several organizations that are pretty heavily governed across the country. Some have even provincial restrictions, and we're able to accommodate those for sure.
Perfect. And KJ, from our perspective, what are you experiencing when you work with cloud-based customers around data residency?
Yeah, so again, I think for some of our customers, it's everything, and for others of our customers, it's not as big of a consideration. I think that not just data residency, but also if we step back and look at the majority of data in the cloud, it's being able to feel confident that you're solving for your business continuity planning. You've got disaster recovery, and so I think not just making sure that the data is maybe residing where you think it is, but also you have multiple versions of it where required. And so yeah, I think that if anything is going to force our customers to really build on premises and avoid the cloud, it's going to be concerns around data and that data residing someplace that it shouldn't be. And so again, if the Splunk data is sort of metadata about the environment and all of the transactions and the services that are operating there, again, I think you have to look at that through that lens. Does that metadata pose a risk for your organization if it resides in the public cloud? And is there data sovereignty around, again, that metadata? So I think it's kind of with multiple layers of decision making you have to go through. But where organizations have made the decision that it's best for their organization to minimize the amount of data that leaves Canada, and they need to build out, and their compliancy requirements require those data repositories to be separated by significant distances. That's where it's challenging sometimes to leverage all of the SaaS services that you want to use. It's sometimes difficult to leverage all of the different cloud providers in Canada at times.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, and looking at the security study and the cloud report that CDW released this year, we had some very interesting insights in the Canadian market space, and this definitely came up as a number of topics. So between sort of data residency and considerations, but holistically, one of the stats that I found really interesting was that once organizations adopted cloud, were originally adopting cloud for this had a security element that was holding them back. Once our customers adopted cloud and started using it, security actually became one of the contributors to continue using cloud. So as we're talking through these things and through SaaS, right, it just goes to show that once you can wrap your head around it, and if you approach it properly, it really does make a difference. And so to that end, maybe KJ, I'll ask you to tee this one up for the gentleman from Splunk there. What, in your opinion, is the difference between observability and monitoring? So that concept of insights versus statistics. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then Cal, Tom, maybe if you can comment on where you're seeing your customer base use Splunk to drive that value out.
Yeah, sure. And then just one thing to note is there was one other question in the chat. So yeah, so really when I think about monitoring and I think about what is the state of the environment, and I've got all of these different components that make up my user environment, they make up my application, they service the applications my customers are consuming. Monitoring is kind of the independent state of all of those different things, and I can roll it up in dashboards and I can maybe do some alerting on it. Really with observability, monitoring is a part of observability, but observability is more about the end user experience. And so it's at the point of consumption, how is the consumer of that application really being serviced, and all of the bits and pieces, all of the components, all the processes, all of the update procedures, everything that goes into delivering that sort of seamless customer experience at the end of that. So I think that's one of the big differences is IT 10 years ago, it was okay, well, is my database online? Is my server reachable? Is my network flooded? Is like it was okay, well, I needed to monitor for these metrics. And now it's more and more about the application in the hands of the user that may be on their own device, they may be on an endpoint at home rather than in the office. And it's really, what is the experience that user is having? And I think what's really interesting about what Tom and Cal were talking about is gathering that data, bringing it into a central location, and then providing insights that are then valid across your entire environment. And so, yeah, so when you look at it, if monitoring is going to tell me a status, then observability should give me insights about the state of that application in my user's hands, and then also building some of that automation behind the scenes.
Yeah, and just, I mean, from my standpoint too, I mean, obviously, security will answer, and SOAR in particular will answer that kind of now what, right? So now what do we do with it? We've got the information, we've made some decisions on it. Now what do we need to do to either remediate or rectify a situation? So again, KJ put it very well, where it all kind of works hand in hand, and they're all part and parcel of each other. And again, lack of sound like a broken record. It really is kind of a platform approach to the entire ecosystem.
Tom, from your side?
Yeah, I think these guys covered it, really well. I like the analogy, right, that observability is like seeing the dials and data in a cockpit while the flight is flying, and then monitoring is the flight recorder once it landed. Right, gives you that understanding of, hey, what's going on in real time versus what happened, and hand in hand, they're critical, and obviously that's why we made a big investment a few years ago in our observability platform.
And then one other thing with that, sorry, is another key part of observability is the proactive nature of observability. And so you really handle that proactive in a couple of ways. You handle that where your developers are building hooks and visibility into the applications, but you also have tools and products like Splunk where they're building the compatibility into those systems to then ingest that data. So anyways, I didn't want to skip past the part where observability is also about planning for that. You need to really think ahead and build some of those capabilities, into the applications or into the monitoring systems, to be able to build those dashboards and those real-time, cockpit instruments that Tom's talking about.
Right. I mean, we had a question teed up around API and API integration. I think we've got an actual live question, so I'll give a quick summary. But just to build on what the gentleman is saying here, this is so key. It's amazing how APIs have changed our industry. It's amazing the amount of APIs and integrations we have. And so when you start looking at SOAR, that as you could hear earlier, Cal gets very passionate when you start talking about SOAR. But when you start digging into SOAR and the capabilities, right? One of the questions earlier is, how do you reduce the lift off of resources? Now that was for bringing a solution in-house, but once it's in-house, it's that SOAR, it's that integration ability, it's making sure that the tool sets are working together, but it's also making sure that you have the process and the procedures to support it. We sometimes jokingly say there's a reason why the O is in front of the A in the word SOAR. And aside from the fact that it's linguistically correct, it's also really important because it means you need that orchestration and that self-awareness for you to automate and make sense out of it, right? Just tackling automation for the sense of automation doesn't always drive it. And then sort of like pivoting off of this, and I think this will be the last one that takes us to the end here. So I'll tee this one. I think Splunk, this is all you. How do I get started to understand the Splunk security solution and the value proposition for small and medium-sized clients?
Yeah, so I love these. I love this question, and it's relative to a lot of the conversations I'm having today with these small and medium-sized organizations. And the stigma out there is like I'm not big enough to put in a SOAR and to manage a SOAR. And the reality is and I'll kind of go back to my earlier statement. What we're giving back is we're giving back the element of time. If you're small, you're strapped for resources, and you don't have the time for a lot of these tasks, then I would argue that the smaller you are, the more you could leverage a SOAR for a lot of those automation tasks and kind of build those processes and build that team, leveraging the power of SOAR and the technology. So that's kind of my statement there. The one thing I will say is, how to get started. Obviously, my go-to will be just contact CDW, and we're there to kind of support them and kind of help you along the way as well. And it doesn't matter really what size. It's not SOAR in general is not geared towards any specific vertical, any specific size of organization. But I will say that the benefits go across the board, whether you're small, medium, or large.
Yeah, and I just want to second what Cal says there. Reach out to your account managers. We have pre-sales solutions architects, non-billable resources that love to talk about solving customers' problems with these technologies. So if you really want to understand, reach out. We're happy to jump on a call. We'll talk about, okay, well, what's your specific use cases? What business challenges are you really trying to solve for? And give you some ideas on how that could work for you. And that's just sort of the starting point. But yeah, reach out to your account managers. We have a team of people that that like to engage. I mean, that's why we kind of got into IT, I think, is we like to solve these types of problems.
Perfect. Gentlemen, anything else from the panel? Last thoughts, last items that came up in your mind as you were listening there?
Yeah, the last thing I would mention, again, I brought it up earlier, but just to reiterate on small to medium clients, right? Obviously, the majority of our small to medium clients are starting in the cloud these days. And, if you have we have the Autobahn, we call it Autobahn because it's fast time to value with Splunk in the cloud, and proves out the use cases. Work with us, work with CDW on doing an Autobahn, and try before you buy. And it's a great program that really gets our customers up and running fast.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think in closing thought on that one from my side, that KJ pointed out, and everybody said, leverage the expertise in the market. There's people out there, non-billable, that's more than happy to dive in and jump in with you and help drive this. I think it's important, though, to remember that just because you're a small or medium organization doesn't mean you have less logs and less information and less systems to monitor. It usually does mean you have less resources, or at least your resources are wearing many different hats. The flip side that we found with orchestration and automation, though, is that actually makes orchestration and automation a little bit easier in some scenarios, because you have one stakeholder that truly understands the whole process and can really articulate it. And so sometimes that's what we find that gets lost in enterprise, is the complexity and all the moving pieces. So definitely still a very valid use case, but definitely worth monitoring and reaching out to us for. So on that note, I know I'm coming up on the end of the hours. We'll be respectful for everybody's time. I want to take a moment, just say, Tom, KJ, Cal, thank you so much for the time. Mickey, thank you so much for the introduction and getting us set up there. I really appreciate it. Splunk, thank you for spending the time with us today and sharing. This was fantastic. We really, really appreciate it. And then, of course, to all the attendees, this is all for you. Without you, this would make no sense. So thank you so much for taking the time, especially on the Eastern time zone here, where I know it's end of day and people hung in there. Really, really appreciate that. If you have any questions, anything else, we have contact info, through reach out to the invite to reach out to your account execs, reach out to Splunk reps. We'd be more than happy to help you. Thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic day. And good luck with the last day before the weekend tomorrow. We'll hopefully see you soon. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.